So it's a something happened. Should you believe in an old earth or a new earth, a recent earth? I don't know. I don't think this passage tells us. My suspicion is, first of all, as I look at Genesis 1, I don't find any clear indication of God making anything out of nothing in Genesis 1. Hebrews 11:6 tells us that God made things out of nothing. Is it 11:6? 11:4? Can't recall. So early verses of 11, 4 to 6. Is 11:6? I can't remember either. I can look that up. I don't need to know it. But the point is to say that here, I don't know what we have except that we have God's ordering the creation as it now is. Are you with me here? I don't know whether that was 25,000 years ago. I don't know whether it was 4.5 billion years ago. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate about it. God has told me what I need to know about it. Beyond that, I should not go. That raises the question then, are we dealing with a literal or a figurative narrative here? And the answer is, in some sense, we're probably dealing with analogical language. What do I mean by analogical language?
Not logical.
No, it's not logical. Analogical means that we're using analogies to explain things that are beyond our comprehension. When I call God Father, is that literally true?
In a sense.
With whom did he have sex to make me his son? Then no, it's not literally true. It's analogical. It's an analogy. It's a valid analogy. Who chose it?
Jesus.
Yeah, or God chose it. God chose that to describe himself. And if God is choosing the analogies are reliable. I must not push them to every possible use to which they might be put. Yes? But they are reliable analogies. Does that make sense to you? Because God has chosen them, then they're reliable analogies. Am I making sense to you? So is this literal or figurative? It probably is not absolutely literal, in the sense that how can you have day and night when there is no sun? I don't know. I don't need to know. God didn't tell me. He said there was day and night. It's literal enough for me to know what was going on. It's analogical language, but it's analogical language by which God intends to communicate. I have two presuppositions when I come to the Bible that are general, not specific. They're not universal. But generally speaking, would you say that God intends to communicate in the Scriptures?
Yes.
All right? If God intends to communicate, is he a good communicator?
The best.
The best. Then if I assume that God is a good communicator and that he intends to communicate, then what he has said is sufficiently like the literal that I can depend on it. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. Now, it's not universally true that God intends to communicate. In Revelation, for example, just to use one very specific example, the seven thunders spoke, and I was preparing to write, and the voice that was speaking with me said, "Do not write, but seal up what the seven thunders have said." So God spoke, but did not intend to communicate. Yes?
Huh.
Anyone other than John. And so here, there is revelation that is not inscripturated, and I don't get any information. I can go a little further with that, where it's a little less clear, but the book of Proverbs is intended to create problems for thought so that you can develop your moral sense. It creates analogies that are difficult to understand in order they erect a barrier to understanding first. So God's primary purpose is not always to communicate. But in a passage like this, I conclude that it is sufficient. It's probably analogical at some point, but it's sufficiently like reality that the analogy is dependable. Are you with me here? So I'm not sure that the question, is Genesis 1 literal or figurative, is a well-framed question. Did God create the earth in 7 days? I think so. Let me give you the reasons why I think so. Read on. The world is in a terrible condition, chaotic mess, and God sets out to solve that chaotic mess. On the first 3 days, 2.5, he solves the shapelessness of the earth, and on the next 3.5 days, He begins to fill the earth. So here, verse 3, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, so God separated the light from the darkness. He is now dealing with the shapelessness of the earth. First things, separating the light and the darkness. So God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day and the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. In verse 5, the first use of the word day, how long is day? If God intends to communicate, and the best interpretation is the one that the author and original readers could share with one another, how long is the first use of the word day in verse 5?
24 hours.
12 hours. 12 hours. He called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Yes? Right? Then, in the second use, how long is the day? 24. 24. Are you with me here? Now turn to chapter 2. Verse 4, Genesis 2:4. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when the Net Bible reads rightly, more literally, in the day when the Lord created the heavens and the earth. How long was the time of the creation of the heavens and the earth according to Genesis 1? Yeah, 6 days. The word day is not universally 24 hours in Genesis. Are you with me? But it's not infinitely expandable. I can't make it millions or billions of years. I can't make it even thousands of years. Are you with me here?
Why not?
Why not? Because the context always determines meaning. In the context, I have three uses of the word day that are definable within the context. One use that's 12 hours, roughly. One use that's 24, roughly. And one use that's 6 days, roughly. But I can't just infinitely, based on the context of Genesis 1, I can't simply infinitely expand or contract the meaning of the word. Context always determines. Wherever Hebrew uses the ordinal numbers, or rather, yes, the ordinal numbers, first, second, third, with the word day, it always refers to 24-hour periods. Look at Genesis 22. This is an example of that. By the way, this is the way I expect you to argue in your papers. When you tell me that something means something, a word means this, then you show me in the context why it means that. That's the only way to argue, folks, on these things. Dictionaries don't prove that a word means anything. Okay? The standard Hebrew lexicon, Brown, Driver, and Briggs, I haven't looked at Kaler and Baumgartner on this, but Brown, Driver, and Briggs says that the verb yada, to acknowledge, to confess, means to give thanks. I can't find any place that it inherently means to give thanks. We'll talk about that later too. Verse 4. On the third day, Abraham got up, caught sight of the place in the distance. So 3,000 years later, Abraham saw Mount Moriah off in the distance, yes? 3,000 years later? No? 3 million years later?
Yes.
Yes. 3 years later? No? 3 weeks later? How long is this period?
Probably 3 real days, 24 hours.
Yeah. There's the night in which he gets the vision, right? And on the third day, so it's less than 72 hours that are in view. Yes? This is a standard thing throughout the scriptures. Look at Exodus 20. God even argues for the Sabbath based on the 6 days of creation. And so he seems to take the view that the days of creation are 24-hour periods. In Exodus 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. Now Exodus 20, verse 9. For 6 days you may labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. Verse 11 now. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth. How long is a day? In Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. 24 hours. So what is he trying to communicate? Is God a good communicator?
Yeah, best.
All right. Does he intend to communicate?
Yes.
Is the meaning shareable? Yeah. Then what does day mean? 24-hour period, or 12, 24, or a week. But it's not infinitely expandable within the context. Does this make sense to you?